All right. Good evening, everyone. We're going to get started. Thank you so much for coming to our annual District 214 Advising the Student Athlete presentation. My name is Christopher Chiakulas. I'm the post-secondary counselor at John Hersey High School, and I'm joined on the call by a lot of the other post-secondary counselors as well, as we are here to share this information with you. Hopefully, you know those folks, but if not, here they are, and there'll be a great resource for you to connect with afterwards if you still have some questions. In addition, as I had up here before, and I'll put it in the chat, I know a lot of people are coming in, there is a link to our post-secondary, our Advising the Student Athlete Guide, which we update every year. So it's a lot of resources on there, a lot of great links, especially as well. Before we get started, and as we still are letting some people in, just want to let you know about some upcoming events district-wide, especially for our juniors who are on there. And I'm going to put up a poll in a second to see what who's here with us tonight. But as far as the post-secondary counselors are concerned, we are hosting 2 events for juniors coming up this spring. The Life After D214 Post-Secondary Planning Night for Juniors on Thursday, February 5th. That will be at Forest View. More information and details about that event will be coming up. So for now, just save the date, and hopefully you'll make it out for that. And then our main event of the spring is our college fair on Tuesday, April 7th at 6 p.m. And as we have the last couple of years, we've added on our Junior Financial Aid Night right before that. At 5 p.m. And we're excited that this year we are planning to offer financial aid information in English, Spanish, and Polish. So definitely a big night to come out for. Not a post-secondary counselor event, but a District 214 event that we're helping spread the word on is our overnight campus visit to Eastern Illinois University. And so sophomores, juniors, and possibly seniors who are still trying to decide, who are interested in criminology or criminal justice, info, technology, business, education, and pre-health are invited to apply to attend this free overnight visit to Eastern Illinois. As you can see, you can explore the campus and sleep in a dorm and do a lot of really cool stuff. So stay tuned, and you can scan that QR code now or reach out to your post-secondary counselor for more information on that. But that is going to be, it was really successful last year, and they're looking to bring a large group of 214 students again this year as well. All right, tonight's agenda, we're going to have a quick opening. I've already talked my max almost from an alum. And those of you maybe who've joined us the previous couple of years have heard my story as a 214 alum and Division I walk-on athlete. But you're all probably tired of hearing that as well, and it's been quite some time now. So I thought, let's get somebody who's living this college student athlete life instead of someone who did it a lifetime ago. So we're gonna have Robert join us in just a couple seconds here, and then the main event will be our keynote from Ms. Long from the NCAA Eligibility Center. A few housekeeping things really quickly. Okay, your video and microphone should be disabled. We would like for you to put all your questions in the Q&A function. So if you're on a laptop, it should be the bottom right corner. There should be like a 9-dot square or something like that towards the bottom. And if you click on that, Q&A should be one of the options. And if you're on an iPad, it should be possibly this little like orange goldish door opening. I think it looks like a gas pump kind of thing, gas tank. And you can find the Q&A feature in there. Again, if there are general questions for the good of the cause, we'll circle back to all of those at the end of Ms. Long's presentation. If you have specific questions for one of our speakers or about your student, definitely reach out to your school's post-secondary counselor afterwards, and we can either answer those questions or connect you if necessary as well. So really quickly, just to kind of get an idea of who we have here. Hopefully this works. It's my first time doing this here. We want to get an idea of who is here. So if you can tell us what school you attend. Hopefully this works. hopefully you can find the poll. Again, it might be back in that those meeting tools, those thing that looks like a 9 dots, at least in the corner of my laptop, to find the poll. And then we're going to launch a second question, is to find out what grade are you in, and if there's multiple people in the house, who's the oldest. If it's parents only or guardians, what parent or what student are you representing? What grade are they in? All right, pretty exciting. We have folks from every school and every grade, which is really great. So thank you for everyone who participated in the poll. If we didn't get to you, that's okay. We're just trying to get a little example. So once again, there's more information in our D214 Student Athlete Recruitment Guide, which has links to the different sites like NCAA, NAIA, junior college, has sample resumes, sample emails to coaches, checklists for different things to do. So it's a pretty intensive guide there that definitely should be looked at, along with a timeline for each year of high school. So highly recommend you take a look at that. I'm sure you can find it on each of your school's post-secondary sites. If not, again, reach out to your post-secondary counselor. So with that said, I'm going to bring up Robert Martin to share a little bit about his more, like I said, more recent experience about being a student athlete. And so Robert's going to talk to us for a few minutes before our keynote event. So Robert, hopefully you were there.
Okay. I think we're good. Yep.
Yep. Take it away.
Perfect. So really thankful again, Mr. Chiakulas, for having me on this evening. So we'll kind of how he was going on. My name is Robert Martin. I graduated from John Hersey High School in 2024. I currently attend Carthage College. I am an economics and a business administration minor. I play linebacker for Carthage College. I also assist with recruiting. I work with the transfer portal athletes. I also help with Iowa, trying to bring recruits on, and also recruits from suburban Chicago, like the District 214, District 211 area. I also am the assistant linebackers coach for John Hersey High School. So for any of the Hersey people, maybe you saw me on the sideline throughout this year. Maybe I worked with your child during the summer camp. And I'm hoping eventually to be a college football coach. I thoroughly enjoy working with athletes, especially young men, and being around some of the coaches I've been around over the last, especially last year. I've really become inspired and really want to learn more about just the game of football, but also get to develop people into, lifelong citizens and great young men in general. So my recruiting process as a high school athlete, right? I'll say this, every sport is different. Similar themes overall, right? Reaching out to coaches, school visits, phone calls, emails, obviously learning professionalism, doing that right. I'm sure teachers have said, especially if there's students on here, writing professional emails is big. Same thing with, texts, don't use slang, stuff like that. The biggest thing I will say though, for your child is film is king. And what do I mean by that? You playing your game is what's going to matter in the long run. If you can show that you can play the game, whatever sport it is, football, soccer, etc., you can show that you can execute on the field and you can do those things. That's going to get you a lot of opportunities really quickly. For people who have less film, that's kind of where, there's a little more of a struggle. Not saying that you can't play the sport. We've had plenty of players that maybe they lacked some film in high school, but they came out and they showed out really well. But I will say, really trying to improve yourself with your current team, whether I understand with some sports, club matters as or along with high school. So proving yourself with club and high school is big for some of the high school only sports, right? Like I would say football is a big one. Baseball a little bit too, basketball not as much, but really showing your high school film is what's going to matter in the long run for these coaches. And just kind of like down below, just kind of an example email, right? This is when I got into the transfer portal earlier, basically a year ago today. Just kind of, salutations, right? I hope this finds you well. And, announcing intentions, like I said, like I'm in the portal. Why did I leave? This was an email to the University of North Dakota. I had a friend there and I was interested in trying to go. I linked my film below, and then obviously closed out the email. It's just about professionalism. So additionally, right, the college application process, very similar to the general population. There aren't too many differences, right? You're still going to use Common App. Many coaches will tell you these things, right? Use the Common App. Sometimes you have to use a school's application portal. A lot of schools, mainly scholarship ones, sometimes there will be relaxed criteria for scholarships, especially if you're trying to get an athletic one, talking more NAIA, Division II, Division I. So sometimes the windows are a little bit larger to get in. And then again, the biggest thing, right, is communicating with coaches on questions. Anything like financially, anything like regarding just how the application works. Usually your coach should understand it, or they will have a designated admissions counselor that should be able to talk you through that. Like for Carthage College, we have a designated admissions counselor for football, which is really big. So he kind of is the one that'll communicate stuff back and forth for us and help families out with anything financial, anything trying to get the application in, whatever it is. That's usually really, really helpful. And then usually your decision will come a bit earlier compared to others. I know typically that we are looking for, with the traditional college selection, there's usually a decision day with normal, with non-athletes going to college. With the college recruiting process, you may have your decision happen, a few months earlier. With football, like right now, if you're going Division III, most people are starting to make their decision now or within the next few weeks as roster spots start to fill up. If you're, earlier, let's say you're going to a Division I school or Division II school, that decision process has been pushed back even further to where you're sometimes making decisions the summer going into your senior year. So you just have to understand that some things may come quicker. But at the end of the day, right, your process is the same. It's just the timeline's a little different. And then kind of how it shows here on the side with the image, using Common App, and then the Hillsdale College one, that is their portal. So some of the schools will ask you to use their portal only. Hillsdale College, a Division II school in Michigan, was one of them. And so I had to use their portal. So making my college choice, right? This is out of high school. It came down to 3 schools. I was considering Cornell College, Division III institution in Iowa, just a little bit north of Iowa City. Hillsdale College, which was a Division II school in Hillsdale, Michigan. It's like South Central Michigan. And Augustana, which is in Rock Island, Illinois. I ended up choosing Cornell College out in Iowa. I liked their unique class system. And then their business program at the time was large. It was fairly large. And I felt that it could definitely be something I wanted to be a part of. And the football program was on the rise as well. So overall, it just kind of all worked out well at the time. I would definitely say when you're looking for a choice, prioritize academics first. Just school has a nice facility. Doesn't mean that the academics are always perfect. Donors can donate to specific things. So while athletics may look strong, the academics may not be as. Just tip of advice. So transitioning into college now, right? College sports are not high school sports. You have to train yourself. The level of experience with college athletes in terms of strength conditioning and what you're doing in high school, it's different, right? They're much more rigorous. There are standards, right? Because you are being brought in to replace other people. That's kind of the goal. So if you don't train yourself, you will get replaced in the long run. And that's, unfortunately, that's the harsh reality, but that is what it is, because at the end of the day, these coaches their livelihoods depend on your performance. So then additionally, right, I roomed with a student athlete. Usually you'll move in a little earlier, especially if you're a fall sport. So, what will that entail, moving in a little earlier, right? Fall camp, especially for football, early mornings, late nights. I mean, most of my mornings started at, especially this fall, around 6:30 a.m., didn't end until about 10 p.m. So it's kind of a grind for about 3.5 weeks, but you have to do it. And it's a great experience in the long run. It teaches you a lot of things, and you're around your teammates, and you're not doing anything else besides your sport. So honestly, for me, it was a great day because all I got to do all day was football. Just kind of talking about really quick, rooming with a student athlete. It's good to have someone that, is doing the same sport as you. They're on the same schedule. It's not overly, you're not stepping on each other's toes. Everyone's doing the same thing. So it's really helpful when you have those long days. So I ended up transferring out of Cornell College in Iowa. What does this process look like? So I had to go to the NCAA Compliance Center, which is inside. Each school has a compliance center or an NCAA representative that works for the school. You submit an ID number that you get through the NCAA, especially if you're registered for Division I or Division II. And you get put into a database of over 10,000 athletes. It's very large. Everyone's vying for a new spot at the school. So you have to understand that there is plenty of competition. You immediately begin the process of speaking to coaches again, going through just like high school. How can I make your team better? Can I join your team? So I will say the process is dramatically faster. My transfer portal process lasted, I think, almost 3.5 weeks, 3.5 to 4 weeks. I visited a handful of schools and it was over. Image on the right, I use Twitter for football, primarily uses Twitter as communication. So you announced that I had to announce that I was getting in the portal, and then other sources reposted or helped share it around. So my decision ended up coming down to 4 schools. Roosevelt University, which is a Division II school in Chicago. They also play in Arlington Heights at Forest View. Hillsdale College again. I have really good connections there. Carthage College, and then Lake Forest College. So I ended up picking Carthage College. It worked out really well. The coaches were great, very, very young staff. And the business program too, I ended up switching my major to economics, and I felt that the program was stronger than what I had because at Cornell announced that they were winding things down. So it just kind of worked out to where I knew I was going to get an excellent business program. The coaches were young. They were super motivated. And I was 50 minutes from home. I live in Arlington Heights. So it was really, really easy to make a decision, and it was affordable. So that worked out well. Tips for high schoolers, right? Don't use pay for recruiting services. Groups like NCSA, I know they kind of reach out right around fall to start talking to athletes. They charge crazy high rates. I mean, over $500 to $700 to just mass email coaches. And I'll tell you, as someone who helps with recruiting, their email goes straight to my spam. I don't even get it. So you're throwing, $700, $800, $900 at a advisor that their email is just going to spam. At the end of the day, it's up to you to advocate for yourself and to go and talk to these people. So just like I said in the next bullet point, be proactive, ask questions, and also get things done early. Don't wait till deadlines. Do not get pressured by schools. There will be a lot of schools that want you to make a decision right away. Don't do that. You have to find what's right for you and to be able to confidently say, I want to go here. It feels like home here. I'm going to go. Don't let a school say you have X number of days, stuff like that. Especially at the Division III level, we have way more time than the other institutions. And then again, if the school is not for you, there is a place for you somewhere. There are hundreds upon hundreds of institutions in the NCAA, and then hundreds of institutions within NAIA as well, that someplace will feel like home. It'll maybe take a little longer, but that's okay. So just really be confident in what you're doing, advocate for yourself, and you're going to find the right thing. So that's really my tips. That seem to work for me really well. I'm happy where I'm at right now at Carthage. It's a great place. I enjoy it every day that I'm there working for football and also being a student. So Yeah. So that pretty much concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out at martinrobert2024@gmail.com. Be more than happy to answer your guys' questions on really anything regarding my process or Carthage College. I have no problem trying to help out. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Robert. That was great insight. Again, from someone who's living it right now. So yeah, feel free to reach out to Robert if you want, and we have his information we can share with you later. All right. So moving on now to our main event. We will bring on Miss Ivorye Long from the NCAA Eligibility Center, and who will go through a lot of very important information as well. That is forever changing, right? Every year, the little things here and there change, but it's always good to stay on top of it. So, Ivorye, whenever you are ready to go, you are up. And again, the Q&A can be used. It's either in the meeting tool, little 9 dots in your bottom right corner, or the thing that looks like an open door.
All right, thank you. And thank you again for having me today and sharing your evening with you all. My name is Ivorye Long, and I'm Assistant Director of Outreach and Strategic Partnerships at the NCAA Eligibility Center. And I am excited to share some information with you all and just to give you some resources and tools, tips and tricks on how to navigate this process. You're going to get a lot of information tonight, and I don't expect you to be experts at the end of the evening, but I do want you to walk away with some information, who your student athletes need to talk to, check in with at their schools. And again, we're all here to support you and your student athletes as you're navigating this process. A little bit about me before we get started. I'm a former Division II student athlete. I ran track and played soccer at the University of Indianapolis. Prior to me coming to the NCAA, I was a former high school teacher and track and field coach. So not only have I sat in the seats of student athletes going through this process, but I've also taught student athletes in the classroom and coached student athletes through the process. So again, it's going to be a lot of information. Don't forget to use the Q&A feature, and we will get started. So there are 3 different divisions. And one thing that we really want to stress when you are looking for schools or looking for, the right place for your student athlete, we want to make sure that you keep your options open. So there are 3 different divisions. When we usually talk to student athletes, everybody wants to go Division I, and we wish everybody could. We wish there were enough roster spots and scholarships for that to happen, but reality is that there aren't enough roster spots for every single student athlete to go Division I. And also, as a student athlete, start thinking about what you want your student athlete experience to look like, because your vision of that could fit better in a Division III model or a Division II model. So just doing some research and really understanding what it is that you want to do or want your student athlete experience to look like is important. But this slide just gives you just some statistics and information about each division. When we go through this presentation, you are going to see how each model is different. There are going to be different academic requirements for each division. There's going to be different ways that you navigate based on the division that your student athlete wants to compete for at the next level. This slide shows all of the sports that we offer. In our fall, winter, and spring sports, those sports are all NCAA championship sports currently. In the emerging sport column, those are sports that have been voted on to be an emerging sport, but they are not an NCAA championship sport yet. So one example of that is women's wrestling was in this emerging sport column last year, and now it's under the winter sport championship. And we are excited that women's wrestling is our 91st championship. This January coming up, acrobatics and tumbling and stunt will be voted on at our national conference to be an NCAA championship sport. So in January, we will find out if we have 2 more. And then also in January, girls flag football is going to be voted on to become an emerging sport. So we are very excited about the growth of college athletics and the opportunities that student athletes will have. Any sport that is listed on this screen, if your student athlete is getting the opportunity to play at an NCAA school, they will have to go through the eligibility center and they will have to meet certain academic requirements, take certain courses, which we will get into in a few slides. One thing that we want student athletes to do is have a responsibility in the process. So as a student athlete, you're going to be the one spending the next 4 to 5 years at the college or university. So when you are going through this process, we want to make sure that you have, you understand what that process looks like, that you're doing researches on schools to see if that's a school you could see yourself at competing, and from an academic standpoint as well. We also want student athletes to look at different things when you are researching schools. And on the screen, we list some suggestions. This isn't the end all be all list, but looking at these things can help you choose the right fit for you. Because as Robert mentioned, when you go to these schools, you are going to be not only playing your sport, but also getting a degree, and then ultimately graduating and moving into the next step of your life. So we want to make sure that this experience is one that you value, and this experience is one that you will be happy with. We understand things change. Student athletes do transfer, and that is okay. But we also want to make sure that as a student athlete, you have a hand in this process. So when you are researching schools you want to go to, when you are researching schools that may have been recruiting you and you haven't heard of that school before, these are some things we want you to keep in mind. If you know what degree you want to pursue, does that school have your major or minor? If you want your family, your friends to come see you compete often, going to a school clear across the country may not give them that opportunity. Also thinking about how often you want to be able to go home or visit home, especially over the holidays, thinking about those things, admission requirements. One of the misconceptions about the recruiting process is that some student athletes believe that as long as they get offered an athletic scholarship, that's all it takes. And we wish it were that easy. But as a student athlete, you do have to apply and be admitted into that college or university before you can compete. And sorry, I clicked too soon. Before you can compete at that college or university. So looking at the school's admission requirements, if you are interested in a school, go onto their website, see what their admission requirements are. What GPA do you need? Do you need to take the SAT or ACT? That's a question we get asked often. Does my student athlete have to take the SAT or ACT to compete at an NCAA school? And the answer is, through the Eligibility Center, we do not require student athletes to submit those SAT or ACT scores any longer. However, we do still encourage student athletes to take those tests because some colleges and universities still require them for admission purposes. And we don't want student athletes to be limited in that recruiting process, or if they get offered by multiple colleges, we don't want you to be limited because you didn't take the SAT or ACT. So who is the Eligibility Center? Why is this person on here telling me that I need to go through the Eligibility Center? Is this something that I need to do? I've heard that, some families are like, I've had coaches, like high school coaches or club coaches say, hey, I know the college coach at this school. You don't even need to go through the Eligibility Center, or, I'll make sure everything gets submitted. And one of the things that I want you to take away from this presentation is that if a student athlete wants to compete at a Division I, Division II, or Division III school, they have to go through the NCAA Eligibility Center. There's no way around it. And so what we do is we certify college-bound student athletes for competition. And we review student athletes' transcripts, their high school transcripts, and we also review their athletics participation. And so in order to get recruited by an NCAA coach, you have to be registered and you have to go through the Eligibility Center. Now, there are 3 requirements to play college sports. This is where it can get a little confusing, but as we go through the next couple of slides, it'll all come together. So the first requirement is that the student athlete has to meet their high school graduation requirements and graduate. The second requirement is that they have to meet the NCAA initial eligibility requirements, and we are going to break those down in a few slides. But I will say that your student athletes' high school graduation requirements and the NCAA requirements are different, and your student athlete has to meet both. And so if you have a student athlete that is interested in playing at the next level, they don't have to be 100% sure. If they are a little bit interested, please make sure that they are having conversations with their school counselor, that they are checking in with their school counselor regularly, because we want to make sure that your student athlete is taking the right courses, that they are on track to meeting not only their high school graduation requirements, but also the NCAA requirements. One piece of this process, when we talk to student athletes or when we go to different events, a lot of times we hear parents say or guardians say, I had no idea this process even existed, or I don't even know who my student athlete needs to talk to. In this process, there are multiple moving pieces and there are multiple people that are important and vital in this process. 9 times out of 10, when you hear coach or when you hear athletics, when you hear colleges, playing sports in college, 9 times out of 10, that high school student athlete, their parent, their guardian is going to think, I need to go talk to the coach. That is one piece of the puzzle. Your school counselor is also an important piece of the puzzle as well. So if you haven't had those conversations yet, please make sure you do. And then the third requirement is being admitted into that college or university. So another misconception again is if a college coach offers you a scholarship, that student athlete is good to go. They don't need to do anything else. The student athlete still has to apply and be admitted into that college or university before they can compete. And so as a student athlete, whether it's one college or multiple colleges, go into those college websites to see what the admission requirements are, because they're going to be different for each college or university. Now, this is our homepage. Our website is eligibilitycenter.org, and there are a few things that you can do when you come to our homepage. The first one is that if you already have an account with us, you can log in, you can make updates to your account. You can also see tasks that we may have assigned to the student athlete by accessing our homepage. The second thing you can do is you can register. So if you have not registered with the Eligibility Center, in the middle, there is a arrow with register. You can click that and it will take you to our account types, and then you will choose the right account for the student athlete at that moment. Now, in a perfect world, we would love for student athletes to register with the Eligibility Center as young as 7th or 8th grade. And I know that that seems early, but we have found that the earlier student athletes and their families know about this process and just are aware of the process. You don't have to know the intricate details of the process, but as long as we know that they are aware of the process, the easier it is, because everything starts in 9th grade. The student athlete's academic time clock starts and athletics time clock starts in 9th grade. So as a 7th or 8th grader, I know when I get to high school, I need to talk to my counselor. I need to make sure that I'm taking the right courses. I need to make sure that I'm, checking in with my counselor regularly. I need to make sure that, if I have questions about the process, who I can go to. Now, if you are a high school student athlete and you have not registered yet, don't panic. You can still register. Those are just some best practices. Now, there are 3 different account types. For the purpose of this presentation, we are going to just cover account types 1 and account type 3. So the first account type is our academic and athletics certification account. Now, this has been updated since September 1 of 2025. So if you have registered with us prior to that date, your account type would have been called academic and amateurism certification account. Now, you're going to notice when we're talking about Division I and Division II athletics, you are going to see the word amateurism go away. And the word athletics is replacing the word amateurism when it comes to Division I or Division II athletics. And so if a student athlete is getting recruited by a Division I or Division II school, this is the account type you would want your student athlete, or your student athlete will need to register with. So if they want to go on a Division I official visit, if they want to sign and receive an athletic scholarship from a Division I or Division II school, this is the account type that they have to have. There is a one-time registration fee, but we do offer a fee waiver. So after you input all of your information at the end, it'll either prompt you to pay with a credit card or click the fee waiver box. I always suggest just check the criteria. If the student athlete just meets one of the criteria, you're going to click that fee waiver box, and then their counselor will approve it at the school, and we will waive it on our end. Our third account type is our profile page account. Now, this is where we would like for most students to start. So if you are a student athlete, maybe you are early on in the recruiting process where you can't get actively recruited yet. So you're in 7th, 8th, or 9th grade, even 10th grade. This is where we would want you to start. If you are a student athlete and you're on the fence, you're like, I don't even know if I want to play right now, this is where we would want you to start. If you are a student athlete and you know you want to play, but you haven't been, recruited yet, or you haven't had those conversations with college coaches, again, this is where we want you to start. This is a free account, and you can transition to that certification account that we just talked about once Division I or Division II schools start reaching out. With any account that you register with, you will get a unique 10-digit NCAA ID number. That number is important because that's the number that you will share with college coaches. That's the number college coaches will need to put a student athlete on their recruiting list. And as Robert said, that's also the number, if you do go into the transfer portal, you do have to submit that NCAA ID number. Now we're going to get into the academic requirements. And so this is where you're going to see some differences between the Division I, Division II, and Division III models. So at the beginning of the presentation, I did mention that your student athlete has to graduate high school, and they also have to meet the NCAA academic requirements. This is where you're going to see some of those differences between those requirements. So to become a Division I qualifier, that means that the student athlete can practice, compete, and receive athletic scholarship their first year. They have to meet these requirements that are shown on the screen. So when we look at a student athlete's transcript, we are looking at their core classes, and that's one of the requirements. Your student athlete has to complete 16 core classes. So one of those differences in high school, your student athlete has to meet a certain amount of credits. Those credits are a combination of your core classes, which are English, math, social studies, science, world language are some examples, and elective courses. So math, band, nutrition and wellness, weights courses, those are some examples of elective courses. At the Eligibility Center, when we look at your student athlete's transcript, we are only looking at their core classes. We also have a requirement for Division I that we call 10-7. And what that means, and I'm going to use any juniors that are on a call. So if you are a junior student athlete, or you are here supporting a student athlete who's a junior, this applies to you. Now, if you are a freshman or a sophomore, listen, because this will apply to you at some point. So what 10-7 is that 10 of those 16 core classes have to be completed before the student athlete starts their 7th semester. If you are a traditional 4-year student athlete, then that 7th semester is your senior year. So 10 of the core classes have to be completed before you start your 7th semester or senior year. 7 have to be in English, math, or science. So that is also an important reason to continue to check in with your school counselor and have these conversations. Another difference that you'll see between the requirements are the GPA. So when you are applying to colleges, they may require a certain GPA for you to be admitted into their school. That GPA is looking at the overall GPA. At the Eligibility Center, when we look at your student athlete's GPA, we are only looking at their GPA in their core classes. So that's why a lot of times when we show resources, or if we're going to different events and we have pop-ups and they see the 2.3 core GPA, a lot of times we hear, oh, that's really low. But it's because we're looking at their GPA only in their core classes. I have seen student athletes have a 3.0 overall GPA and a 2.0 in their core classes. So this just shows you how important academics are when you are thinking about playing athletics at the next level. Now, I did want to show you another resource that you can find on our webpage. So again, our homepage is eligibilitycenter.org. And in the upper right-hand corner where you see this orange box, it says high school portal. If you click on that, you will click on NCAA core courses, and you will type in the name of your high school, put in your city and state, and then it will show you all of the core classes that have been approved by the NCAA Eligibility Center that your student athlete can take that will count towards their NCAA requirement. So if you are a student athlete who is proactive and you want to start looking at courses, for next semester and even next year, you can use this list to see what courses will count towards your NCAA requirements. Another resource is also your school counselor who can help navigate through that process as well. Division I academic redshirt. So this is where maybe the student athlete didn't meet that 10-7 requirement that we just mentioned. Maybe they didn't get that 2.3 core GPA, but as long as they've met these two requirements on the screen, they would be deemed a Division I academic redshirt. So if they are getting recruited by a Division I school, what they would be able to do is they would be able to receive athletic scholarship their first year. They would be able to practice their first term. They just can't compete their first year. Now, this is also an example of how important academics are, not just in high school, but also at the collegiate level as well. Because if you notice, it says practice first term. So depending on how well the student athlete does, their first term of college determines if they can practice that second term. Division II qualifier. So this is where you're going to see the difference in academic requirements and the models of Division I and Division II. So notice Division I had 4 different requirements. Division II has 2 for their qualifier. So for a Division II qualifier, they have to meet these 2 requirements, complete 16 core classes, and have at least a 2.2 core GPA to practice, compete, and receive athletic scholarship their first year. And then Division II partial qualifier. So if the student athlete didn't meet any of those requirements that were listed on the previous screen, as long as they graduated high school, they can practice and receive athletic scholarship their first year. They just can't compete their first year. Now, when we work with high school counselors, we suggest that they set every student athlete up to meet Division I qualifier requirements, because if a student athlete is eligible Division I, they're also eligible Division II and III. Now, this is where you'll also see another, the difference between Division I, Division II, and Division III models. So for Division III, there are a few things to know, and then there is one update that will take place starting next fall. So Division III schools set their own academic standards on campus. So you would work with the admissions office. You will also work with your advisor or the coach to determine, what those standards are. And then also, one thing to note with Division III is that they do not offer athletic scholarship. So Division I and Division II offers athletic scholarship. Division III does not. So if you are competing and going to go into a Division III school to compete, talk to the compliance office, talk to the coach to see what grants, scholarships, any financial assistance that they have that can help you towards your financial responsibilities. Now, prior to fall of 2026, so if you had a student athlete who graduated last year and competed at a Division III school, if they're a domestic student athlete, meaning they have competed and completed all 4 years of high school in the United States, they did not have to register with the Eligibility Center at all. They would just go directly through their school that they're going to attend and compete for. Effective fall of 2026, every student athlete, whether they're international or domestic, has to be enrolled to registered with the Eligibility Center. So for any domestic student athlete enrolling to compete at a Division III school, you will need to register with that free profile page account, because Division III now wants every student athlete to have an NCAA ID number. Another Another piece of advice or just direction within this process that I want to make you aware of is that if you are a student athlete that is at Division 3 and then you are going to transfer to a Division 1 or Division 2 school, then you would have to transition to that certification account that we talked about, and you would still have to go through some type of certification. Another piece of advice as well is if a student athlete say they didn't go to an NCAA school initially, maybe they went NAIA or maybe they went to a junior college and then they want to transfer to a Division 1 school, you will still have to go through that certification process. We get this question a lot of how do I know when my student athlete's being recruited? What does that look like? When can they start getting recruited? The recruiting process will look different. As Robert stated, everybody's recruiting process will look different. So I will highly suggest and echo what he said about not comparing your journey with other people's journey. So if you have a classmate or a teammate or a family friend or a friend, a family member getting recruited, do not compare your journey to theirs because it is going to look different, especially if you've had somebody in your family or you know somebody who got recruited years and years ago. The process looks different. So just be aware of that piece. But if any of these things are happening that's listed on this screen, that means your student athlete is getting interest from a college coach and they are being recruited. So if they are getting calls, text, emails, direct messages on social media, that's showing interest. If a coach visits your high school, if they come to your home, if they offer you an official visit, they are showing interest. If they offer you an athletic scholarship, those are all examples of being recruited. Now, if you are in ninth grade, because recruiting can begin as early as ninth grade, it's going to look different than a student athlete who is a junior or senior. So if you are in ninth grade, you may get a letter in the mail that says, hey, this is our school. This is a little bit about our school, some of the academic side, some of the athletic side. They may have you fill out a little form to get more information. So then in the event that when that active recruiting period opens up, then they'll have your information to reach out. In most cases, though, recruiting starts in 11th grade. So your student athlete can be actively recruited this summer after their sophomore year. So the summer going into their junior year, that's when open recruiting starts. But typically recruiting starts in 11th grade. Now, this is a important resource that we have because sometimes student athletes, and we've heard this before, where they're like, this coach was interested in me 2 months ago. I went to this tournament and the coach was there, but they didn't speak to me or my family. So maybe they're not interested in me anymore. It could be the recruiting calendar period that sport is in. So one thing to note is that every college sport has a different recruiting calendar. So the football recruiting calendar is going to look different than basketball. That's going to look different than soccer, than swimming. Swimming is going to look different from track and field. So this resource will show you the sport or sports that you play. You can see when the recruiting periods are for your sport. So contact period. If I'm a college coach, I can talk face to face to the student athlete and their family on and off a college campus. So I can invite you to the college campus. I can also come to your school. I can come to your home. Quiet period. The only time a college coach can talk face to face with a student athlete and their family is on a college campus. So they cannot talk to you at your school. They can't come to your home. They can't talk to you at that tournament that you saw them at. Dead period. There's no face to face interaction between a student athlete, family members, and a college coach on or off a college campus. So this table just shows you what you can and cannot do during those specific periods of your sport or sports that you are competing in. Official versus unofficial visits. So the main difference between the two is that official visits, that's a visit that is paid by the college campus. And then unofficial visits are visits that are paid for by the family member and the student athlete. Now, With official visits to Division I or Division II schools, there are 3 things that must be in place before they can even happen. So the student athlete does have to be registered with the Eligibility Center. They have to be on that school's IRL, or essentially their recruiting list. And in order for a student athlete to be on an NCAA school's recruiting list, they have to have that NCAA ID number. So if a college coach is wanting to invite your student athlete on a Division I or Division II official visit, they have to submit their NCAA ID number to the Eligibility Center. And then the last requirement is that the student athlete has to request a copy of their high school transcript. Now, these are some topics that we want to share with you. When you're talking to college coaches, there have been so many changes, and also there's, other entities that have come about college sports. So even think about name, image, and likeness, the transfer portal. There are so many things that have changed through just within the last 6 months with college athletics. And so we want to make sure that when you're meeting with college coaches, you're getting your questions answered. So one of the questions that we do find helpful is talking about that financial piece of scholarship. Scholarships look different for every student athlete. So if you see a student athlete post on social media that they got a full ride scholarship, that could look different. It could be a full athletic scholarship. It could be a full academic scholarship. It could be a partial academic, partial athletic, combined to a full. So if a college coach is offering you a scholarship, asking those questions, is it a full scholarship or is it a partial? If it is a partial, what is that percentage and what is it going to look like year after year? Because the first year you could get a 50% scholarship. That second year, it can increase, decrease, or stay the same. So those are some questions you want to ask. If you know what degree you want to pursue, asking that coach, am I able to pursue this degree and compete for your program at the same time? Because there have been student athletes that, a coach says, hey, I see you want to study engineering. Well, the classes that you take, they will conflict with our practice schedule. They're conflict with our film time. And so they may ask you to look at another major or go another route. If that's a non-negotiable for you, then that shows you, okay, maybe I should start looking at other schools. If you play a position-specific sport like football or track and field, making sure that you are, and even baseball, softball, making sure that you not only get to know the head coach, but also the position coach, because not every time the head coach is going to be your position coach. Asking about playing time. You as a student athlete may have, one picture in your mind of how your first season is going to start, and the coach may have a completely different picture or plan in place for you for your first year. So having those conversations are very, very important. These are some recruiting best practices. I'm not going to go through all of these, but I do want to talk about the first 2. So as a student athlete, talk with your support system about what level of competition they think you should aim for. As I stated before, everybody wants to go Division I, and we wish that were a possibility, but it's just not reality. And then also your goals for yourself as a student athlete, what you want your student athlete experience to be, may be at a Division II or Division III school. So talking to your support system, one of the things I used to do with my student athletes is I would have them list their top 3 or 5 schools, and then I would give them their personal best in every event that they competed in. And then we would compare those to student athletes that compete in those same events at the schools that they listed. So then they could get a realistic visual of, okay, if I go to this school, then I will be able to compete right away and contribute right away. Or maybe looking at a mid-major Division I, or maybe Division II or Division III. That is a way for you to see what level of competition you should aim for. And then the second one is how you conduct yourself. College coaches do pay attention. They look at your social media. They, you never know who's in the audiences at your games. So there may be a college coach there recruiting another student athlete, or they may be there because maybe their child plays for the opposing team. So you never know who's looking. They are going to see how you conduct yourself if you get benched during a game. They're going to see if you, got a call that you didn't agree with, how are you reacting? How are you conducting yourself? Even in the community, they are going to ask questions of how are you in the community? How are you in the classroom? Because that's a huge piece of collegiate athletics is that they don't, I know online it seems like all they do is practice, compete, and make TikToks, but they do go to class and they do have to meet certain academic requirements in order to continue to compete at the collegiate level. So just keeping in mind that aspect. Social media can be a powerful tool in the recruiting process, so use it to your advantage. X, formerly known as Twitter, is where we see college coaches most active. And so in your bio, put your NCAA ID number, your height, your weight, your graduating class, even, your GPA. And then if you have any film, huddle, or highlight reels, pin it to the top of your profile. You can even tag coaches, email coaches, direct message those videos and highlights to coaches. Use them as a benefit and as a positive tool in the recruiting space because college coaches are looking. Name, image, and likeness. NCAA student athletes can benefit from their name, image, and likeness, and it will look different. Depending on what school you go to. And so we want to make sure if that's an opportunity that you have, meeting with the compliance office at your school to ensure, okay, am I able to take advantage of this? If so, what does that look like? Because each state has different NIL laws. So for example, Illinois has NIL laws in place, Indiana does not. And so how to navigate those will look different. So just making sure that you are checking in with the compliance office at your college campus to see how to navigate that. Athletics aid. So this is essentially your scholarship. So if you are getting offered an athletic scholarship to a Division I or Division II school, there are some things to keep in mind. It is voluntary. So even if you're going to the school, you don't have to sign the athletics aid agreement. It is voluntary. But if you do sign one, it does end the recruiting process. So that means that no other schools can talk to you unless you request a release from the school that you signed with. These athletic scholarships are provided for a minimum of one academic school year. And again, you have to be admitted into that NCAA school in order to receive that athletic scholarship. And before we get to any questions, these are some links to resources. I will make sure that I send this presentation to Mr. Chiakulas so then he can send it all out to you all. Every single link in this presentation, you will have access to click and access those resources. So our registration checklist, this is just the list of the different account types that we have, and you can see which account type is going to be the right fit for your student athlete. Our guide for the college-bound student athlete, that is our most comprehensive resource. So it went over everything that I went through tonight and more. Our initial eligibility flyer is just a one-pager. So it shows all of the academic requirements for Division I and Division II. And then if you have a student athlete with an education impacting disability, so if they have a 504 or a 504 plan or an IEP, there are certain accommodations that are there for the student athlete. And so that just walks you through what those accommodations are, and what documentation that needs to be provided to have those access those accommodations. And then this is our customer support number. So if you do have questions after tonight, I know this was a lot of information, but if you do have questions after tonight, this is our customer support number. You will get a live person. I would highly suggest taking advantage of this resource because there are so many people out here that are giving false information, and it's not on purpose. It could be that they're like, hey, 5 years ago, I went through this process and this is how it was done when I was in school, and maybe, going through the process and they don't know about the changes. And so you can get false or misinformation. So we just want to make sure that your answers or your questions are getting answered and you are getting the correct and updated answers when you need them. So with that, I am going to see if there are any questions in the chat.
Yes, thank you so much, Ivory. And yes, it was a lot of information. As someone did ask, that the slides will be shared with me, who will share with all the post-secondary counselors, who will share them however they typically share stuff. So definitely, make sure you have that. Right now, if you do have a question, please put it in again for the good of all. One question that came in was if you should use your school or personal email. I would definitely use your personal email. It's like we just saw with Robert, who is still using the center, and needing that information after high school. He won't have access to his 214, email anymore. So definitely for all college stuff, we typically recommend using a personal, professional email, so that it doesn't get lost with all of your school stuff, and that you'll have access to it after you graduate from District 214. So good question, for sure. Again, if anyone else does have questions, for the good of all, please let us know. We have a lot of these resources there in, once again, the in our student athlete guide that we make in 214, which again, I will put in the chat one more time. There are links to a lot of the stuff that Ivory mentioned, to other divisions, NAIA, a lot of great stuff too. So definitely check that out. I do see a question. Where did it go? Here we go. That I will let Ivory answer. Can a student register for recruiting for more than one sport?
Yes. So when you register with whether it's the profile page account or the certification account, you will list every sport that your student athlete does participate in. Even if they're not going on to play all of those sports in college, you will want to list all of the sports they compete in.
All right, great. All right. With that said, again, we have the contact information for Ivory, for the NCAA in general. I think Ivory made a really great point at the end to always go to the source when you have questions. There's so much information out there. And as both said, everyone's process can be very different, and different opinions can sometimes muddle the process. So when in doubt, ask. Start with your post-secondary counselor or ask the NCAA directly. Ask, coach if you can get a hold of them directly. Ask the admissions, team at the college directly. And that way you'll make sure you have accurate information, and aren't, especially again, if it's something where someone's asking you to pay for money, that's up to you. I know the post-secondary counselors are more than willing to talk through some of that stuff, but just kind of keep in mind what it is. So anyways, we do have one question that came in. Can film clips be recorded by a parent with a cell phone from the stands, or should a professional be hired?
It doesn't have to be a professional, because a lot of phones now have really great cameras and video recording capabilities. So we don't want you to go out and spend all this money on equipment to get film. So as a parent, if you have a phone, you can definitely do it that way. There are times where student athletes, maybe they're in a training session and they have somebody, record a training session, and they, make a highlight reel off of TikTok and post it. But yes, that's totally fine.
I'm sure the key is to making sure that who's you're identifiable, right? If you're,
right, yes.
It's the whole field and there's 20 something people on there, who are you?
Right.
So, and then I know again, as well, I ran Division I cross country track. Times don't lie, right? A 400 meter track's a 400 meter track. I don't know how much film anyone needs to see. They just need to see those official results, and so be it.
And one thing I do want to add to that is if you are in track and field or cross country, making sure you're getting those FAT times and not hand times. So that's
and I know most of the state series and those big meets definitely are at this point. A question came in: would a women's flag football be available already?
So there are schools that offer women's flag. It is not an NCAA championship sport. In January, we are expecting them to vote for it to become an emerging sport. Once it becomes an emerging sport, then a certain number of colleges have to offer it as a varsity sport for it to be an NCAA championship sport. Women's flag is the fastest growing sport that we have seen. And so once it becomes an emerging sport, it will probably be like a year or two before it's, an NCAA championship sport. So as of now, it is not. But if you are, you know, um, in ninth or 10th or 11th grade, I would definitely register with that profile page account. But again, there are schools who still offer it as either an intramural sport or a non-NCAA championship sport.
Thanks. A question came in: how are core class GPAs scored considering AP and honors courses, weighted or unweighted? And I'm pretty sure it's just it's all unweighted.
Well, we
Correct?
do, as long as the district or school has, like, if you offer weight for AP or honors classes, as long as the weighted grading scale is on their NCAA, listed on their NCAA portal account, we will award weight.
Okay. And of course, keep in mind, as well, that you're looking to be admitted to the school. So admissions, we'll definitely be looking at the courses and the rigor and all that. And so you definitely keep that in mind. All right. So a few more questions coming in. One of them is pretty specific. Does Hersey provide any film to their players, specifically baseball? I would check with each of your coaches, no matter what school you go to. I know there's a lot of teams film, for their own, review for watching their own tape. I don't know if they'll share that with you all. So definitely, talk to your coaches and see if you have access to that film, or if it'd be something you would need for yourself. So that could be a case by case thing. Is it advised to find official recruiting summer camps? And if so, does the NCAA Eligibility Center have a list of summer camps that 9th and 10th graders should do? And are any of those in Chicago?
If your student athlete has the opportunity to go to a camp, I would highly suggest it. Because sometimes there may be coaches there, sometimes there may be opportunities where they have film that they share. So whether it's a summer camp, whether it's an AAU or club team, if your student athlete has the opportunity, I would definitely say take advantage of that opportunity. We personally do not have a list of summer camps, but I would, look at different, you could probably Google like football camps in the Chicago area and a list will come up, or football camps in whether it's a closer radius in a different state, and they will be able to have a list.
All right. We do have the recording feature going on this, so we're fingers crossed that it will show up as something that saves and is useful when we're done. So besides the slides, if the recording works, that will also be shared out with the post-secondary counselors into each school as well. So just kind of keep a lookout for that. So hopefully the recording is also working as well. Another question that came in, I'm looking at the list of approved high school courses. Some show EID courses, yes or no. Can you explain what that means?
So EID courses are courses that are education impacting disability. So if a school provides like a course that are for student athletes who have IEPs or 504 plans that are specific, if it says yes, that is an EID course. If it says no, that's just a general course.
I will say from the academic eligibility, District 214, we are one of the top, districts in the world, of course, so our graduation requirements and our, plans for most students are going to get you, academically eligible. If you're kind of following what most college-bound students are doing, you should be good to go. We only see some issues where if you didn't pass a class or decided you didn't want to take social studies for a couple of years or things like that. But most students, I think if you're taking math, science, English, social studies, freshman year, sophomore year, junior year, you're going to hit all those things. But always a good thing to obviously check with your counselor. Now, as all of you know, we are in the middle of course selection for next year. If you haven't met with your counselor, you probably will before break, no matter what school you're at. So definitely, if there's something you think you're missing, and you already met with your counselor, go back and check. But definitely something to figure out right now before it gets too late. Another question about if your student has an IEP, and I'm looking at the courses that have a yes. So if my child has an IEP, am I looking at the courses that have yes?
No, not necessarily, because not all schools offer specific courses that are, specific to IEP or 504. That's just showing us that if it is, like an English 9 course that is tailored to student athletes or students who have IEPs or 504s, there's like maybe certain documentation that they have to present. So we know that is actually a core course that's the same rigor as the general English 9. So all student athletes will take the approved core courses. So whether it's English 9 general, English, algebra 1, they can take any courses that are listed on that approved core course list. So you're not just looking for the courses that have yes or no as an IEP, because with certain districts and schools, that wouldn't be enough courses to hit that 16 if you were just looking at those. So you're looking at all of those courses that are on that list that are approved.
Okay. Great questions, everyone, for sure. Again, and if you do have, really specific scenarios, or you want, to make sure you're hitting all the benchmarks for eligibility, they're in the information in the slides that will come out there, and in our guide, and which links to the NCAA guide, there are worksheets where you can, put in all your courses and things like that. Or I'm sure your counselor or post-secondary counselor could sit with you and fill it all out if you want to make sure you're on track or not. So definitely, something that we're here to help with. So yeah, I think so far we are caught up with all the questions. So again, if you have individualized questions, for sure, definitely reach out. We can share the information from our speakers through your school's post-secondary counselor, and that will go out as well. So with that said, I think we'll call it a night, because there was a lot of information. Even though it was only an hour and 13 or so minutes, we touched on a lot of great stuff. So thank you all for coming. Thank you to Robert for taking time out of his busy college athlete schedule and sharing his information. Ivory, thank you so much for joining us as well. And everyone, thank you again. Have a great rest of your semester. Finish strong. Do well in those finals. And best of luck to everyone. Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.